can Alvin Kamara continue to produce at the running back position in the passing game without Drew Brees? Now, Drew Brees, before the 2019 season, targeted running backs more than any other quarterback since 2009. So going back to 2009, he had targeted running backs more than any other quarterback. That's 27.1% of the time that he looked to his running backs. If you're wondering where Jameis Winston is on that list before the 2019 season, he was 20th at about 16%. So not terrible, right? He could have been at the very bottom of the list. He wasn't. He was just a little bit below halfway. But Jameis Winston's targets, or at least over 47% of them, second most in that same span of time over quarterbacks during that time, went to the outside receiver, just about, like I mentioned, second most in the NFL during that time. So he tended to focus on the outside receiver. Drew Brees tended to focus down to his running backs and passing out of the backfield. Now, it helps when you've had guys like Pierre Thomas and Deuce McAllister and Reggie Bush and Mark Ingram and, of course, Alvin Kamara to throw to out of the backfield. Of course, you're going to throw to those guys, and certainly that makes a big deal. It makes a big difference. You look at Jameis Winston, same thing. He's had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin to throw to. You're going to target those guys, right? So where the talent is where the ball is going to go. So how does that affect what happens if Jameis Winston becomes the starting quarterback in New Orleans? Does all of a sudden all of those targets end up going to the outside receivers, Michael Thomas, and then either Traquan Smith or Marquez Callaway at this time? Or do you see a little bit of a shift because there's all of the talent that's there and Alvin Kamara out of the backfield? I do think that regardless of what it is that Jameis Winston's history tells us, there is only going to be so much of a shift that will happen in Sean Payton's offense, which is a proven offense in over 17 years of play calling, including his time with the New York Giants. He has produced 10 top 5 offenses during that time. So I don't think you're going to see a huge departure from the things that you have seen in New Orleans since the 2019 season, which included more deep shots up until about 2018. So with all of that, we can take a look at how many targets Alvin Kamara has gotten over the course of, let's say, his first 3 years, because we can more directly compare that to starting years for Jameis Winston. We can talk about how many times Jameis Winston or Tampa Bay quarterbacks in general targeted Tampa Bay running backs, and then see how that all factors out. So in 2019, which is probably the one that we should focus on a little bit more than the other 2 seasons here, because that was Jameis Winston all 16 games, 81 receptions on 95 targets for Alvin Kamara. That included 25 catches on 28 targets coming from Teddy Bridgewater in that season. This is the UCL season for Drew Brees, where he missed 5 games early on. During that same season, Tampa Bay running backs got 84 receptions, so 3 more receptions than Alvin Kamara did by himself on 103 targets, so 8 more targets than Alvin Kamara. Again, we can look at the 2018-2017 season. If you want to see those breakdowns, you can check out the piece over at CanalStreetChronicles.com. But let's glaze over those for this purpose, because really the 2019 season is the only season that didn't have Ryan Fitzpatrick starting a portion of those games and throwing to those running backs. So let's keep it as consistent as we can and stick with the 2019 season. Now, the thing that's interesting about that is because, as we mentioned, before the 2019 season, you saw Jameis Winston be the quarterback that targeted outside wide receivers the second most in the NFL since 2009, so over the course of that decade. However, that very year in 2019, he ended up targeting the running backs out of the backfield 8 more times than Alvin Kamara received targets. We'll talk about why that's important here in just a moment. But so it just goes to show you that over 100 targets, just over 16% of his 2019 targets going to his running backs is pretty good. And it gives you an idea of how it is that he could continue to contribute and provide the volume necessary for Alvin Kamara to be able to produce out of the backfield. The other part is, how do you replace some of the downfield targets to more maybe safe, let's say safe targets as well? Now, remember, he threw a ton downfield during the 2019 season. So one of the reasons why he also had 30 interceptions during that time. You look at Drew Brees and Teddy Bridgewater in 2019, they combined for 45 passes downfield. Meanwhile, when it came to Jameis Winston, he threw 99 passes downfield, exceeding the Drew Brees and Teddy Bridgewater combined amount by 54 passes by himself. You take, let's say, 42 of those targets, and what I'm doing when I say 42 is that I'm taking the targets that went to Latavius Murray in 2019, redirect those to the backfield for Jameis Winston, give him back the 8 additional targets that he threw to his backs already above Alvin Kamara's target percentage, and that still gives you an opportunity for 64 downfield targets, not including any targets that would end up also going to Alvin Kamara downfield, 20 plus yards down the field, because he has the capacity to be able to add that. And that 64 deep pass total is still one more than Patrick Mahomes threw in the 2019 season. And you get all of the targets to Alvin Kamara and even the other running backs in the backfield as well. So that's why I believe that even with Jameis Winston under center, if Jameis Winston ends up winning the quarterback battle in New Orleans, Alvin Kamara and the running backs can still produce out of the backfield for the New Orleans Saints.